What do you think there is? Do you think that the world, as we receive it at the moment through television, newspapers and so on, there are certain people who think it's almost beyond satire, description will do?
Yes, I mean, the sense, I think it's, Hunter Thompson says reality itself has become too twisted, and J.G. Ballard, who I regard as a great mentor, has said that the job of the writer of fiction has become to invent alternate realities, because real reality is too fictional itself in that way.
Would you say you had major targets as a satirist, and if so, what are they?
The target must always remain, as it were, vested control systems, and they, of course, are manifest in the terms of hierarchies of all forms, hierarchies of power, economic hierarchies, then intersections of bigotry that dominate our culture. And at the same time, I think hidden and psychic systems of control that have to be attacked as well. In my fiction, the inability of humans to communicate with one another emotionally is given a priori. I mean, I never actually even bother to state the fact that human relationships are an impossible, malconnective failure that will not save us from the abyss. That's always a given. Where do we get from there?
Is that a given? Is that a given from you as you are, or from you as you are as a writer?
I'm far more negative as a writer than I am as a person. I mean, worlds away, worlds away. And in a way, I'm almost spoofing my own writing in that sense, because I do think that I'm always rather puzzled by the accusation that my work is curiously unemotional and cold, and I don't find it that way at all. I think it's crammed with feelings. A lot of them are very unhappy, though, I wouldn't dispute that. But even in the acknowledgement of unhappiness, I think, can come a certain stoical acceptance, and even a certain joy, a certain peculiar joy.
There is a dark side to Will, because there's a very dark side to life that most of us hide from. He talks about the darkness at the edge of the sun, and it's a kind of metaphor for him. He kind of sees things very, very clearly, very intensely and brightly, and to do so he does have to dig deep.
Do you feel you put on a different costume when you go in to write?
I find myself absolutely curiously uncluttered by my own personality when I'm in the driving seat. Coming back to the question of whether or not, in a sense, one views one's work as therapeutic, one would imagine that in order to feel that in the act of writing, you would have a sort of, Daddy Freud figure sitting by the side of the word processor saying, well, that's very good, and, could you get a little bit more of that out? And I actually find no such persona within myself when I'm writing, and I've been agreeably surprised by that. I think particularly my immunity to criticism, or to people picking out aspects of my work and saying, for example, that's cold or affectless, and then getting a complex and going off and writing a love story. It really, I'm surprised by myself, because as a person, I'm perfectly vulnerable to criticism and feel it just as much as anybody else. But when I get in the seat and I get to write, I really do find that as Burroughs once said, it sometimes comes like dictation.
Some of my innovations regarding the new genre of motorway verse have been poorly received, both by the critics and by the reading public. I cannot understand this. It seems to me that the subconscious apprehension of signs by motorway drivers is exactly analogous to that act whereby the poets of primitive cultures actually breathe reality into the land. An example would be on the M40, Junction 1A, brackets M25, Uxbridge, London, brackets W. Last night, in my reverie, I saw the M40 as it will be some 20,000 years from now when the second Neolithic age has dawned over Europe. Still no services. All the 6 carriageways and the hard shoulder are grassed over. Every single one of the exit markers has been crudely tipped to the horizontal, forming a series of steel piers. On top of them are the decomposing corpses of motorway chieftains, laid out for excarnation prior to internment. It is here that I am going to be buried, where the motorway plunges through a gun-sight cutting. Just beyond the Chiltern Scarp, the M40 bisects the Ridgeway, that Neolithic drover's path, which was the motorway of the Stone Age Britain. I have opted for something in the manner of an ancient chamber tomb, and the idea that perhaps in some distant future, disputatious archaeologists will find themselves flummoxed by the discovery of my tomb brings a twitch to my jowls. Will the similarities in construction between my tomb and the great chamber tombs of Orkney lead them to posit a continuous motorway culture lasting some 7,000 years? I hope so.
I'm very interested in the idea that you actually define a topography for a fiction before you build the fiction on it. And in that sense, say in my collection Grey Area, my unifying place is the M40 corridor. I mean, I can't say it without laughing. This place that was defined by a route rather than being defined by itself, which seems to me quite a change in the way we orient ourselves around physical geography. When I look at the motorway, I see the caissons of the motorway bridges, and I see the white barred areas that, as it were, are shaded areas on the motorway. They're not intended for you to go onto them. And it seems to me that this is a synecdoche, as it were, of the way in which physical and human geography intersect in our world, but don't actually join. To give you an example, you know, the River Thames passes through London, yet very few people of the people who live and work in the city have seen the mouth of that river, yet they've lived here all their lives. And it seems to me that that's what modern mass society, mass communication has done to us. And it's something I write about. I'm writing about people who live in the tube map rather than living in London. We're on the Isle of Grain, which is the, as it were, the most southeasterly point on the bank of the River Thames, at the mouth of the Thames estuary opposite to Southend. I think that in a very peculiar way, this place is the other sort of wedge at the end of Britain. It's the other sort of bookend to Rousay and Orkney. Grain is a hyper-real landscape. It's a landscape where scale is distorted yet again, where sounds of metal bashing boom across the estuary from Shappey. Power stations appear like the sort of thing you might put on Monopoly boards. It's all cut up and pasted together with scrappy fields full of horses and odd bits of marshland and strange sub-baritone mutant housing estates, all of it tossed around in a very peculiar fashion, not unlike the sort of parallel worlds that inhabit my fiction.
Do you have a project in mind? Are there areas of current knowledge which seem to you to be hotter than others?
Are we looking for a sort of futurological perspective here?
Yeah.
Of what's the up and coming cutting edge?
Well, as far as you're concerned, yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I mean, no. No, I don't. But I mean, what puzzles me about myself is that I do retain odd mystical views about this. I don't think that the future is discoverable by looking ahead. I think it's as much discoverable in the now. A lot of what's preoccupied me with different topographies within Britain has been this sense of them being perhaps over-imagined in the past, many stories being told about them, and then those stories going away and leaving only inhering in the stones in that way. And I think that's the way I feel about the stories to come as well, that in a sense, like the ghosts in this very house, they may wander through the walls rather than being summoned by rubbing on a bottle. When